Welcome to the Fintech Focus podcast, where we bring in experts from across the financial and fintech industries. Through insightful interviews with thought leaders and professionals, we explore emerging trends, uncover new opportunities, and showcase how fintech is helping bridge the financial gap. The Fintech Focus podcast is proudly brought to you by Stac AI in collaboration with Africa Discourse Channel. In this episode, we explore the rapid transformation of Africa's financial services infrastructure and the visionary leaders driving its growth. Our guest, Dr. Aaron Kavapo, CEO of Stac AI, shares his inspiring journey and delves into how Stac AI is empowering financial institutions and telecom companies to deliver core banking services, particularly in underserved areas, through their innovative digital trust infrastructure.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Fintech Focus podcast. In this podcast, we bring experts within the fintech space across Africa, and we dive deep into some of the major trends across the fintech industry. I'm happy to host my first guest, and I always thought he's the myth, the legend. He's always someone who is behind the scene. And he's been very, very instrumental when it comes to fintech in Ghana. And I'm happy to introduce Dr. Arnold. Welcome to my, it's an honor to have you to grace my first episode on the Fintech Focus podcast. So just to give everyone a background of the podcast. So it's a podcast in partnership with the Africa Discourse Channel, where, as I mentioned earlier, we look to throw light on what is happening in fintech across Africa. So I'm happy to host you. So I would like to give you a few minutes to introduce yourself. Then we zoom into the conversation.
Yeah. No, but thank you very much. And I think the admiration is mutual.
Yeah.
You are far too generous. But I'll take it like that.
Yeah.
So my name is Arnold Kavapo. I'm CEO of Stac AI. I started life in the traditional banking and eventually saw the light. So I moved over to the technology fintech space. So I spent some time in East Africa, in Southern Africa, and came back to Ghana. And then I helped to set up the first digital credit product. Most people know it as Quick Loan, whether it's any number of products that are delivered on that platform. Most people just know it as Quick Loan.
Yeah.
So I did that for a bit of time.
Okay.
Then I went on to consult for a neobank,
Okay.
one of the leading neobanks across Africa, Kuda.
Okay. Interesting.
So I was part of the UK, Kuda Technologies UK.
Okay.
And then after some time, I realized that I needed to come back and solve some very pertinent issues within the African region by setting up Stac AI.
Interesting. Thank you for. That's like my dream CV actually. Having someone having your level of experience, and as I was saying earlier, you've built something that someone a lot of people are privileged to have used, right? Making credit easily accessible to people across the country.
Yeah.
So we are talking about you building the largest digital banking infrastructure that is going to power the next wave of digital banks across the continent. Digital banking infrastructure sounds like a fancy word. How would I tell my grandmother what's digital banking infrastructure? It looks too fancy. So I want to understand, just break it down to what a layman would think digital banking infrastructure or the digital banking even means in the first place.
Yeah. So like most products or most services, there is what happens in the background and there's what, the customer or the individual's experience. So in the old form of banking, we used to have lots of people in the back end doing like, processing. So when you went to take your money, you see a lot of people in the back basically running around and doing stuff. That is a sense of what banking was. Now, imagine that both the back end and then the front end have been digitized. And so you no longer have to see people. You can now sit down in the comfort of your home and be able to access all your banking needs on your phone. You can access them on, on any kind of digital platform.
Yeah.
But even the most important part of it is what happens on the back, in the back end.
Yeah.
So the kind of like foundational elements that exist, the pipelines, whether it's payment rails that exist to facilitate that, whether there's some kind of identity profiling that happens, whether it's some kind of like alternative data, public digital infrastructure that you can leverage to be able to provide, the right form of user profiles on your customers, so that the customer can be better served. There's more visibility into the life of the customer, and there's better utility for the services that they do get.
Awesome. I mean, as you were saying, I mean, for me, I'm very. People say I'm very obsessed with fintech, right? I mean, I'm as equally obsessed as you, and looking at the industry trends over the past few years, you look at Latin America, you look at Asia Pacific, you look at US, you look at Europe, you look at some parts of Africa, and you can see the likes of Nubank, Revolut, Monzo, and the likes providing digital banking services to a lot of customers across these markets. Now you come to Africa, we have a few of them. We have like Kuda, which you probably work for. I think this carbon. And there's the big elephant in the room, MTN Mobile Money. And now we want to. Africa has one of the most financially excluded population across the globe, right? And I mean, that's why we've seen the likes of MTN achieving that level of growth. But there's still a huge gap. A lot of people don't have access to basic financial services. Some people might attribute it to the lack of regulatory clarity or lack of regulation. That's why startups are not able to extend these financial services to these underserved communities, right? So can you paint a picture of how these digital banking ecosystem or the digital banking infrastructure economy has evolved over time, and just to understand the trends, and probably we'll dive deeper into why you saw a gap in that trend and why you wanted to fit in.
No, thank you very much. So the fundamental problem we have across Africa and then also like the emerging markets regions, typically it's like underdeveloped infrastructure. And it's cyclical. So one, there is underdeveloped infrastructure, which means that there's very little you know about your customer, and then that translates into higher cost because you have to provision for bad debts. You have to kind of make allowances for whatever risks that you are undertaking. And so by the time you close that gap, so now you are giving customers really bad products because either you're just doing mass market and not really segmenting and targeting customers properly, or you're giving customers products that are too expensive because you can't properly profile them. And so it becomes like a bit cyclical. And it just continues that way around. The other side of it is that because your cost of acquisition, your cost of processing is so high, it limits your penetration. So it limits the amount of people that you can bring into the fold. Because infrastructure enables the rails to connect, to communicate, to be able to do disbursements, to be able to do collections, to be able to do customer engagement, education, and so on and so forth. But in the absence of that, you have this, kind of like a closed circuit, revolving ecosystem, which is not expanding. And so that's the fundamental problem that we have, and that's further even exacerbated because there are traditional ways in which people underwrite credit. and the typical underwriting of credit is usually through credit profiles.
Yeah.
In the absence of any historical context of people's use of credit, even becomes much more difficult.
Yeah.
But the opportunity that we had, and I'm happy you mentioned the likes of the telcos like MTN, like we had with Safaricom and other things, is that once you'll be able to solve that rich problem, there's a lot of historical information you can create. Everybody leaves behind a digital dust. That digital dust becomes core ingredients to be able to build profiles, to be able to build your algorithms around, to be able to test those algorithms, to be able to train the data.
Yeah.
And then eventually evolve like a more robust financial system that other people can then leverage, because you are, in essence, bringing everything together in a single point, and then that becomes usable.
Yeah.
And I'm using that to lay the foundation as it relates to like banking services. That we all know that banks are the largest reservoirs of capital. They have the lowest, cost to raising capital as compared to other means.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to the managing financial assets, they're actually better at it. But when it comes to the element of distribution or retail, they are not very great at retail. They're very good at corporates. They're very good at like store of value, but not very good at like when it comes to creating
reaching the masses.
Yeah. And so what you can do once you've expanded the scope is that you can now connect the cheaper source of capital that's coming from the traditional banking side into like connecting that capital with the general populace who otherwise didn't have that means. And telcos help bridge that communication gap. It helps move money from one point to another, and also even as people interact with that system, they also leave behind a bit about their lives which becomes like fertile information.
Because I mean that makes sense, because already they have that financial that distribution and also that spending habit, because already the telco has like that first layer of data about people buying call credits, data, and etc. So already there's some level of digital footprint about that customer that's been left. And also that distribution, that last mile distribution, that advantage that they sort of have. So like, I mean, it sort of makes sense. So, I mean, I was in Nairobi and like, so we landed and we got, I mean, it didn't take time for us to like get a Safaricom, what's it called? SIM card. And we could transact same day, right? That's how fast digital financial services are transforming, right? So what does the future looks like in terms of what you are doing with Stac
AI? I know.
Funny thing is, you are Stac AI, I'm Stac OA, so like it's very interesting. So so I want to know what's everybody wants to know. Okay, what has Stac AI? What's Stac AI? What has Stac AI been doing? And there's a huge gap, right? And how is that AI fitting into that huge gap? As you mentioned, there needs to be that infrastructure that powers like how customers are evolving and how financial service providers are delivering these core financial services to these people. Because regulations keep changing. For instance, GDPR, we are saying regulate like an open banking regulation, for instance, and how it's going to transform financial service product, and etc. So what have Stac AI actually seen as an opportunity in the gap, and how are you leveraging on your experience and what you are building with your team to transform that?
No, thank you. So Stac AI, we're a financial trust infrastructure. And if you look at financial services, it's always just based on trust. That I trust you to give you a service, to give you money, or to give you a savings option. I trust you that you will repay me back. And I trust the amounts that I will give you. So I trust the loan amount that would qualify for you to be able to take. So that's really the basis of financial service. So we build a financial trust infrastructure that leverages the most extensive data from both public and private sources. And with that, we use our algorithms to basically create trusted credentials. So those trusted credentials becomes basis upon which people can leverage to be able to offer traditional services. So I'll give you an example. So we currently integrate with some of the data sources like your credit bureaus, your Ghana Revenue Authority, your Ghana Post GPS, and some additional data sources. And with that, we collect that data, we process that data, and we turn them into a usable form, so that we can have a more holistic view of individuals, of SMEs, so that a bank is more confident in being able to provide credit to these options. Let me give you a typical use case of that. So we are the local technology partner for the Ghana Integrated Financial Ecosystem. And that's a partnership between the Monetary Authority of Singapore, the Development Bank of Ghana, and the Bank of Ghana. So we process the data, and that data is now used by the various partner banks to be able to on-lend. By the absence of knowing who these customers are, the banks is able to tell whether these customers exist at all, what their profiles are, what their background is, how much money they can provide to these customers, and so on and so forth. But then even beyond that, what we are doing is just providing the layer. So verification of information, be able to provide a credit scoring system. And then lastly, enabling an easy to deploy financial system, because it's one thing be able to say, oh, I have created, the tools. It's another thing actually equipping institutions to be able to utilize those tools. So we've created like a microservices or a modularized financial technology infrastructure that banks can leverage to be able to, one, from origination through to settlement, through to product management, reporting, and so on and so forth.
Okay, so your typical customers are not, it's not like the typical B2C where you have a consumer facing product.
No.
So you're more like an infrastructure player where you work with these financial services providers to deliver this suite of services to them. That's pretty interesting. So now I want us to zoom back into regulation. And every company, every fintech company that operates in our space knows that. There's this biggest bull in the room, and that has to do with what does regulation looks like for us? And in terms of on your side, what does that journey look like in terms of regulation? Are you licensed? Are you? Basically, just to understand these nuances.
So we're licensed by the Bank of Ghana. We also have our data protection certificate as well. We are ISO certified. So ISO 27101, we are ISO certified as well. The journey has been interesting, and I think it's always going to be a tussle between regulators and innovators. On the one hand, regulators want to maintain the sanctity of the financial system. They want to avoid things like systemic risks, financial risks. But in trying to do that, there is a huge cost that they exert from startups. It's almost impossible if you would do your costing. It's almost impossible to be able to start a company with less than $200,000. Like going through all the different layers of regulation, paying for all the things. It's almost impossible. And then we have to ask ourselves questions around how many startups can really go on and start, given that kind of cost. And so, but at the same time, when there is no regulation, ecosystems struggle. A typical example is cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency is amazing, but when there is no regulation and there's that trust does not exist amongst traditional players, the banks who are the largest reservoirs of resources, and then the big super platforms, when they don't have that level of confidence to be saying that, okay, we are going to use this as our primary reserve for our resources. When you don't have that regulatory backend, it has a way of, yes, it grows, but it doesn't become deep enough. It doesn't go deep enough. It doesn't become systemic enough. The volume of business doesn't go into that space. So there's a fine balance that I believe needs to be maintained. I've had a fortune of being in the industry a bit longer, so I understand that this was meant to be a marathon and not a sprint.
Yeah.
So I came in with that mindset, and apply myself with an open mind, and constant yes sir, massa, and just run with it rather than try to argue your way out.
I mean, the like you said, the regulator is not a bad person as people perceive it. I mean, at the end of the day, the regulator seeks to protect the customer, because if anything happens, it's the regulator that will be held responsible of not doing their job.
Yeah, they have the responsibility.
They have the responsibility, right? So yeah, I mean that's very, very essential. I mean, funny, just a bit. I get a lot of companies reaching out. They're like, "Oh, regulation is stiff." Yeah, it's. I mean, we can all admit that. Even we as investors, even admit the fact that, I mean, the regulatory barrier that exists actually affects our opportunity to continue to invest, because what's the likelihood of the company that we are going to invest at, let's say, a pre-seed stage, going to be shut down because these guys don't have licenses and stuff like that, right? So I mean, that like you said, we need that level of balance.
Yeah, but we're saying that we have to give praise to the Bank of Ghana for establishing the regulatory sandbox.
Yes, I mean, I think kudos to that office. I think they've been the most forward-thinking regulatory institutions across the continent. I might say across the world. Because I mean they had that open arms. They've engaged a lot of ecosystem players. I remember they also engaged us during the sandbox stakeholder engagement forum. And as you said, these things are vital to making sure that we are creating a safe space for everybody to operate. But we always need more. We always need, and I think just recently, like you said, you brought good luck, right? We were talking about the draft, the draft by BOG on regulating on the roadmap to regulatory digital assets, and I think these things are actually coming handy, and it's a good time. These things are actually happening, and it's very, very exciting to see. You mentioned cryptocurrencies, and it's interesting, and we are going to see how cryptocurrencies are going to evolve over the next couple of years, and banks might be looking to adapt cryptocurrency. So how does that look like for Stac AI? Are you building that rail or that infrastructure that sort of underpins that economy for the future?
No, thank you. So I think when thinking about cryptocurrency, there's a product side of it, and there's also like the store of value part of it. Our primary focus is on the infrastructure.
Okay.
If you like, we like to be like the plumbing in the building, not the fanciful stuff.
Okay.
Let other people do the paintings and all the fanciful stuff. We just like, we deal with the dirt and stuff, and then we want to be the plumbing. So we want to build the rails on which you can activate, you can turn on a crypto. One is you can verify who you're dealing with. You can verify the rails and all of those things. You can verify the payment channels and all of those things. So what we are actually doing is just building the rails on which those kind of services can be deployed.
All right. That very, very interesting to hear. So I think we've had a quick run so far, and I want to know what the future outlook looks like for Stac AI. I'm very tempted to say Start OA.
Start OA, I know.
Maybe there's something that has to happen.
It's fine.
There's something that has to happen.
We're waiting for the check. That's good omen.
That's a good one. So I mean, what does the future of Start
Stack AI.
Stac AI
Yeah,
looks
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
and also more to add to it. Also the fact that there's AI to your stack.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and
How we
we are in the
operationalize.
evolution of artificial intelligence and
Yeah,
how it's
yeah,
been transforming
yeah,
financial
yeah,
services. And
yeah.
I mean, I see a lot of use cases in your infrastructure
Mm,
side. So
mm,
how
mm,
does the future look like for
mm, mm.
Stack AI?
So we identify that like AI can bypass us if we don't create our own data
Yeah,
on in our own environment.
yeah,
If all the models that are being trained is based on data that's it's not here,
yeah,
a lot of like the use cases that will be created will not be perfect fit for our market. And so when we started, our focus is actually always around like where do we have the largest reserves of data. And so our integrations have been purposeful. We work with banks, we work with telcos, we work with, the provide like, some of the public digital infrastructure providers. Always tricky to mention names. So we work with them. And the whole purpose has been around how do we make sure that we have the right data that we can now be able to train our models on. So
yeah,
there are two things that we think that that we know like our future is going to be built on. One is that we want to build, want to productize some of our services. So we've got a data reels that's been created, but
yeah.
want to productize some of our services. So we are looking to productize a service on some of the telcos. So we're looking to deploy some digital credit products on some of the telcos. We're also looking, so forgive me again for saying telcos because technically they are EMIs.
Yeah.
But we all recognize them as telcos, yeah. So we're looking to do that. And then in addition to that, too, we want to provide, tools that just powers financial services. So if you look at the core infrastructure for, say, credit, we want to be able to break it down into smaller parts so that a bank, for example, can utilize that to do their own, credit reporting, to do their own asset creation, financial assets creation, to do their own portfolio management.
Okay.
So we would provide all of those tools so that it becomes easier to deploy services across. Because right now, if you mean to, run a digital credit product on some of the smaller ecosystems,
Yeah.
it's a bit more expensive because it has to the cost of running it might be quite high.
Yeah.
And then you don't solve that access problem.
Yeah.
But then if it is a services that is part of the bank's core operation cost, or their own team are the one that's running it, becomes actually a lot easier for them. So we're doubling down on building the infrastructure in terms of acquisition of data, training of models, and also the tools and rails to be able to manage financial assets.
Awesome. That's happy to hear. I mean, I can't wait for that. I think we are getting to the end of the show. So I'd want to know. It's something I'm starting on the show, and I'm going to ask one interesting question.
Okay.
Two interesting questions.
Okay.
I mean, it could be across your career. It could be.
Yeah.
I want to know what's been the worst advice you've got building Stac AI,
Ah.
or in your career.
Yeah.
And number two, what's been the best career advice you've ever had?
So at the time I started Stac AI,
Yeah.
I got an offer as an independent contractor with the UN, and my wife said, "What the heck is wrong with you?" So I don't know whether it's the worst career advice that I received, but it was certainly one that caused me to think a lot. And that days that you wonder, okay, those six figures will not be bad.
That's exit money.
Yeah, exactly. That's exit money right there.
Yeah. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
But I mean, those.
But then the best career advice I
Yeah.
received was actually from one of my former bosses, who he's French,
Okay.
and he said that you should never stop hustling. And he was a millionaire, multimillionaire, and he lost it, and he was trying to recreate it. He said, "Arnold, you should never stop hustling. Like, just whenever you feel like you're comfortable, just keep hustling." And that actually was the energy that caused me to realize that, okay, I still got something in me.
Yeah. And we can see it, and I mean, we can see what Stac AI, we can see what Stac AI has grown to become.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm excited about the future, and I can't wait to see what you're building, and I can't wait to explore synergies between Stac OA and Stac AI, and what we could do together to advance financial services and financial inclusion at large. I also want to know, I mean, there are a lot of people that would want to know about you. Like, where do you think they can find you? LinkedIn, what's your LinkedIn account, or what's your Twitter, or X? Now it's called X. So,
No, it's just Stac AI. So stac.ai.
Okay.
That's our website, www.stac.ai. You can also find us on LinkedIn, like you said. You can find us on X. But we're mostly active on LinkedIn.
It's where your people are. It's pretty much understandable. So I'd like to thank you for being the first guest on my show, and we really appreciate it, and I'd like to thank you enough. So basically, this is the first episode of the Fintech Focused podcast. So I mean, in the next episode, we are going to be hosting other industry players that are building and transforming Ghana and Africa's financial services landscape. Thank you very much, and it's been great doing this with the Africa discussion. Next time, see you guys. Thank you.
And that concludes today's insightful episode of the Fintech Focus podcast. A special thank you to Dr. Aaron Kavapo for joining us and sharing how Stac AI is transforming access to core banking services through cutting-edge digital trust infrastructure. If you enjoyed today's discussion and would want to hear more about the change makers shaping Africa's financial future, then do well to subscribe and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Don't forget to share this episode with your network. Thanks for listening.